made this video to explore if Bigfoot is really real. A year ago I released the incredible Bigfoot documentary, and it was well received, and I think has close to 77,000 views after a year. But a lot of you said, man, we really like you because you're enthusiastic, but you're not into hype, you're not into scripted Bigfoot shows, and we'd really like to see another. But instead of just patching something together to get more views, I decided to wait till I had some really good stuff, and boy do I! There's a helicopter pilot that all he does for a living is fly in to Vancouver Island and other places where there's no logging roads, and he saw one vividly in detail.
They probably walked a good 500-600 feet.
And other eyewitness accounts. Hi, this is Bruce, and he had an encounter with Bigfoot in all places in Nebraska.
Yeah, I was out driving with my brother. We farm in rural Nebraska there, and probably a quarter mile away. It was in January, and the fields are all barren, of course. And we were driving around a section to see our neighbor's new home that he had built. And I said to my brother, "What's that up on that hill about a quarter mile away?" He said, "Well, I'd say it's Bigfoot." I said, "You know, I would too." 9 foot tall, approximately.
Wow.
Cute, big head, you know, normal shoulders, the hands below the knees, normal stuff.
Hands
he was just going to the east, just walking, and strides were just huge. And the time we turned around, we were going to follow him. It was hilly, not terrible hilly, but hilly. He was gone. He crossed the road and he was gone. There's a lot of wooded area in that area. And
yeah.
Never seen him again. But then a few weeks had passed, and the neighbors would say that they hear knocks on their houses, like something would slam against their houses.
Wow.
And my brother heard the same thing. He lives alone. He's a bachelor. And he said, yeah, one night it just shook the whole house.
Shook the whole house.
And, you know, we can't confirm what it was, but we just thought we saw it, and it had to be what it was. It wasn't a man, and what's shaking the houses? I guess that's what we think.
And did it seem to take big steps to get away real quickly? Because you went up there to like follow it.
Yes, it was huge strides. I mean,
strides.
nobody could run that fast.
Did you happen to look for tracks?
No, we didn't. It wasn't our property. So,
oh, it wasn't
and it was
your
frozen.
property.
It was, it was like 10 degrees. So.
Now, what part of the Nebraska is this?
Northeast corner. We're about an hour from the South Dakota border.
Oh, near the South Dakota border.
Yeah, Missouri River. We're about 40 minutes from it. So.
Wow. Were there other tales that the neighbors told?
Actually, my one neighbor, his uncle, they farm also, and this is years past. They'd be out hanging, and they always said, "Why is we being followed by monkeys?" And it was just common knowledge that there was a monkey, or two in the grove. And his uncle said they were monkeys. They were big. They were really big. But it's just kind of like people that know it know it. I mean, it's
Now, was there any point of reference to make it come up with you in your mind that it was 9 foot tall?
I guess just I kind of figured 9 to 10. I mean,
and just because there was some stubble to kind of measure it against.
And fence posts, I know are about 5, and I could just tell. I mean, I've farmed, lived on a farm all my life.
So, did you see it any amount of time, or?
Yeah, it was 30 seconds. But as we drove, what caught my attention was deer running the other way.
Wow.
So, they always say Bigfoot.
A lot of people say they feed on deer, and there was an incident in Potlatch, Idaho, where a lady looked in her rearview mirror and saw a Bigfoot chasing a deer, and then she wrecked. Really? And the cops had to put it down. Lady sees Bigfoot chasing a deer in her mirror, and then she wrecks. And it sounded pretty interesting, and I think that a lot of people have mentioned a stank odor associated with the Bigfoot, and I personally feel they scavenge as well as squatch. Thanks for sharing your story.
Sure.
How long ago was that?
Oh, it'd be probably 6 years ago now.
About 6 years ago, and there's been continued rumors and everything.
Yeah, there was continued activity for about a year, and now nothing.
Yeah,
there's been nothing.
For about a year.
In the area. So.
And do you actually farm that country?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Bruce, for the story.
In the 1970s, I live in Knox County, Nebraska. There was a sighting also by the mill. So,
a mill in Knox County, Nebraska.
So.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story.
Sure, no problem.
I have since found out that the Omaha tribe of Nebraska has a rich history of Sasquatch within their tribal lore and recent sightings as well. They call it Sitonga. Okay, so give us a little specifics about how he looked.
Well, it was normal what you think, I guess. That the head was, huge.
Yeah.
And the shoulders were more like, not like a man's. They're just muscular.
Yeah.
You could tell. And the arms, hands hung below the knees, just like an ape.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right.
And legs were huge, like pillars.
Uh-huh.
That's what I call it.
If you had to guess his weight, you guessed his size around 9 feet, but how would you guess his weight?
Oh boy, 700.
Yeah.
I would say.
Plenty big, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
You have a great day.
Okay.
Well, you guys really enjoyed Vern here, my milkman, and his knowledge on the incredible Bigfoot documentary part 1. That scientist named Jeff in Idaho has all those prints carefully cataloged, and he had a couple of guys from Dallas that were crime specialists come and look at the prints, and they found that there's a similar grain in the foot that only appears on those prints, and it's on most all of them.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't been able to see that. That'll be interesting to look up.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
And I've known Jeff. I have actually met him years ago. But they actually have a facility up by Snoqualmie Pass. They hunt for Bigfoot. There's a full group of the people up there, scientists, paleontologists, and I know he's been from Idaho over there to that facility numerous times.
Interesting.
Yes. The other one, film footage I did see within the last 6 months that I thought was really interesting was Snoqualmie Pass has a film footage of Bigfoot walking through the Department of Transportation sand pile.
Oh my God.
You have to pull it up. It actually shows it with their highway camera, their road camera, walking across the snow at where their sand pile was for sanding the roads. And that's the first one from Washington that was clear and plain.
Yeah, isn't that? Well, thanks for sharing.
Hey, you're sure welcome.
Mr. Patterson took a polygraph test on this Bigfoot he filmed, and he passed with flying colors.
Is the creature in your film real? Yes.
Well, since my first documentary 14 months ago, I've been out hunting and hiking plenty, but I still haven't seen a Bigfoot myself, but this was pretty cool. I did get an elk across a freezing river on a 14-degree day and had to haul it across the river piece by piece.
Hi, little red fox. How you doing?
But I did have this wild red fox come to within 6 feet of me, and he wanted to tell me something, but I kind of got stage fright when I saw his sharp fangs so close to my bare legs because I only had cutoffs on. So I kind of boxed the Dr. Dolittle session.
You better go now.
Now, thanks to almost 78,000 of you who watched the first documentary so far, but while it was premiering in my business, this young man got all excited because his brother saw Bigfoot in Utah up close and personal, so he wanted to give me that story.
Somebody that is doing a documentary on Bigfoot, and he's gone around, was it California?
Yeah, California, Oregon, Washington, and
Montana. Investigating Bigfoot. I told him that you've seen about your experience seeing him, and he wanted to. He's actually recording me right now, so he wanted to know what the specifics were on the story. It was a long time ago. How long? 2000 about? Okay. So fall of 2000, northern Utah, between Tremont, Utah and Logan, Utah. Okay.
Oh, near
And
Tremont.
what happened? Mountain pass you have to go over. Okay. The bottom of the mountain pass is Bear River. So the road goes down and there's an indentation on the bottom where it goes across the river and then it goes back up and out.
Bear River.
Okay. So you're coming out. Okay. Over the top of the crest, it was nighttime. About 10 o'clock at night.
Was it dark already?
Was it dark already then? Yes.
You know, one of the famous Bigfoot trackers down in California, he said that he'd only see their tracks on starry nights, on moonlit nights.
Yeah. He said he's just telling me that he's only seen Bigfoot tracks on starry nights, moonlit nights. So, yeah. So what happened? Okay, skin with a crest. In front of you. So there's a big and hairy squatting in the middle of the road in front of you. And what do you do? So you had to swerve into the other lane to miss it. Okay.
Wow.
Slammed on your brakes. So it came to a stop 20 yards past it because you'd swerved to not hit it. Okay. So you're looking out your back window at it. Stood up on 2 feet. It was holding something in the road and it was picking something up. Looked like roadkill it was picking up or something. Okay. So looked at you for 10 seconds, just standing there. Okay.
Wow.
And when it took off, you said it took off back down into the river. And how did it take off? On 2 feet? Ran on 2 feet.
Ask him, did the run look graceful or
So
did
up to
it
that
look
point,
a
he
bit
was not a
awkward?
believer, but now it's his only explanation is that it was Bigfoot. He's got a question for me, Corey. Hold on.
Ask him if the run seemed graceful or if it seemed like awkward in its running.
Did the run seem graceful or awkward in the way it ran? Very graceful, long strides.
Graceful and long
Graceful and
strides.
long strides.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how big?
And how big was he? About, would you say, if you were to guess? I know 20 yards is a little way off in the dark, but a lot taller than your car. Okay. At least 8 feet tall.
At least 8 feet.
Okay.
Is this a wilderness area there by Bear River?
Is that Wilderness River? Was it Bear River that it went across, or? So there weren't any houses or anything back then, but there are houses there now. Okay. But back then, was it like fields, or was there forest around, or what is it? What did it look like? The river bottoms. Okay. The top of the river bottoms were more fields. Okay. So it was a little bit in the open then. Oh, there's more trees in the river bottoms. Okay, so when he headed back down to the river bottoms, he was in the cover of the trees a little bit that way. I see. Okay.
And could he tell at all what color it was?
Could you tell what color it was? Or was it light enough that you could see what color it was, or? It was dark, brown or black. Darker shade. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Corey.
And what was its face like? Did it look kind of like a gorilla, or what would its facial?
Could you tell what its face looked like? Did it look more gorilla-like, or very hairy? He remembers his eyes, and his eyes were very man-like.
Man-like. And he wasn't a believer before, but afterwards, he is.
Yes. Since then, it's his only explanation is that's what it was.
Is he reluctant to tell the story, or does he not
Are you
mind?
reluctant to tell the story, or do you not mind telling it? Yeah. He said he used to be, but now he tells it all the time.
You know, some of the people I interviewed, they won't even say they really saw it because they're afraid people will call them crazy.
Right. He said that some people are afraid to tell it because they're afraid people will call them crazy. Is that kind of why you wouldn't tell it before? Or used to be? That used to be his thoughts.
Yeah. Well, tell him thanks. I appreciate it.
So now he said he's actually proud of believing in Bigfoot. He's come around to admitting and letting people know about it. Yeah. Well, thanks, Corey. He wanted to thank you.
In researching Corey's account, I found that there was a sighting by a police chief in that similar time frame in the same Tremonton, Logan, Garland area of Utah. And in researching Bruce's account, I found that there were also sightings in that area of Nebraska, and then they dissipated entirely. Hey, look at the nice fish I caught. I found I'm not the only one who has been having this experience of Googling what I consider a pretty real sighting and finding others in that area. There was a pro fisherman named Stefan. I just watched his testimony, and I put the link on here for you. He saw what he felt could be nothing other than a Bigfoot or an escaped gorilla. in the wee hours of the morning in Wisconsin. And so he Googled Wisconsin Bigfoot sightings and found that the place that he saw it at is the hotbed for Bigfoot sightings in Wisconsin, near Phillipsburg. So I don't think it would be fair to say that, well, you can Google any place and find Bigfoot sightings. There is consistency in sightings in specific regions. Well, you can see we've done a whole batch of jam today and it's all over me. But the cool thing about having the business here is I'm talking to all these people, and Landon here actually watched my last documentary and really thought it was cool, and then came up to me and said, you know, I believe I had an experience with Bigfoot.
So we were out hunting for elk out in Red Bluff, which is a place out in Washington State. And it was coming around nightfall, and it was just sunset, and everything, the forest went dark, and behind us is this big giant bluff, and rocks fall all the time, but this huge boulder was actually thrown. Well, it feels like it's thrown because it fell further than most other boulders, and it didn't roll, it was just a thud.
The rocks were so big and the noise was so loud that you could hear the rocks hitting the rocks in the water underneath.
Wow.
It was a kaboosh with a crash. So they were big rocks that whatever was throwing them.
Wow.
Like 200 or 300 pounds. Like, you can't lift that up by a normal human.
And you actually saw the boulder?
Yeah, it went down the hill and it fell down, and it wasn't like you could hear it falling. It was just a thud next to me, and then it rolled on the ground.
Wow. Isn't that something? Was there any movement or signs or smell?
It smells reeked. You smell it smells like skunk.
Yeah.
Like strong skunk. It smells like a barnyard.
And you don't think it may have just dislodged from up somehow naturally?
It does a washout with rain, so it will slowly fall, and then it hits rocks as it goes down, and then it comes down to a little pebble slide. Well, it was just thrown, like it was pushed, because it just hit and then rolled along. It didn't hit like any other rocks.
You know, the Bigfoot throwing rocks is a pretty common thing. My buddy, he was out huckleberry picking, and the chief told him, don't go in that certain burn. There's Bigfoot in there. But he went in the burn anyway, picking, and he said they saw some creatures there that actually threw a couple of giant rocks at them. And so he had a tale of rocks being thrown as well. Giant rocks, like yours.
I really did like your documentary, so.
All right, thank you. Now check this out. When I get a report like this, I go on the internet and check if there's anything similar happening in that area. And here a guy living in a remote part of Red Bluff said that he was relaxing by a stream and a big rock whooshed over his head, and then another, and then another. George E. Shaw. I was pretty good friends with one of his offspring named Monty Shaw. Anyway, there's a few of the select best of my huckleberry pickers that learned it all from George Shaw and the Cree Indians, the way that they do it and their systems and everything. And that's why they're bringing in these beautiful berries, and they're making $3.50 a day while other people are making lunch money. Just sorry for the joke. Anyway, George Shaw told them that there's this burn that they really should never go into, but they went in there and was doing a little picking, and all of a sudden they see this rock come flying that's, yay wide and that thick, just come flying, and they're thinking, man, who could do that? Who could do something like that? And I'm just trying to get this story out while it's fresh in my mind that they told me, hon, I'll be out there in a minute. And they was picking. All of a sudden they see this rock that had been thrown coming near them that's like 2.5 feet wide and that thick. And they're thinking, whoa, like what could throw a rock that big? And then that he looked up in there and saw this being that was, 6'6", maybe 7 foot, but was massively wide and took strides that were 6-7 feet long. Saw it and another go off into the woods, and he just got a glimpse of it, but he said it was a massive creature. And he was telling me that in that area, George the chief, he said there's a lot of trees that have been pulled up right by their roots and everything, and their huts are up there and everything. These are some of the real mountain men that have been picking huckleberries for me for like 32 years. I trust their word, and I know they've been in the deepest reaches of the huckleberry country that could also easily be Sasquatch country. This is where it all ends up, in my 40-gallon steam kettle. As it was getting dark, we pulled into the spookiest island. It was just a kind of a spooky place because it had really big cottonwood trees and there was a foggy mist surrounding it. And we pulled up into a little finger inlet that went toward the island with our canoe. Now those islands are remote. Something was giving me the heebie-jeebies because I just felt like I was being watched. And finally I said to Jay, are you sleeping? He said, no, something's giving me the creeps about this place. And then as we were still laying there, kind of having the creeps already, then there was a huge curse flash in the finger inlet next to us. Well, this family was watching the Bigfoot documentary right over here, and Jay and his son Bodie were saying they found some similar Bigfoot. What are they called again?
Dens. I call them Bigfoot dens.
They said they found some similar Bigfoot dens as the one in my show over by Superior.
Pretty much. I keep hiking around, mushroom picking, huckleberry picking, and just hiking in the woods. And I keep finding these dens, and it's just enough for a torso to fit in. It's not even enough to cover your legs, and that's what's so weird. Is it's a man-made structure, but it's not big enough for a man to fit in.
Yeah.
So it's just big enough to shelter for the night.
And she was saying her auntie or something saw one over in Superior.
Yep. Yeah, both my they seen one in Superior running up the mountain. My aunt did, and then other families seen them over in California, other parts of the country.
And she said the arms were dangling rather low.
Yes.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm. Almost to the ground. Yeah.
Wow, well, appreciate that, Jay.
Yeah, no problem. Possible Bigfoot den. It's weird because it's a bum shelter.
What?
But it has bones in it. That's what's crazy.
Let's put in the bones in. Do I?
Well, no, there's more because of Bo, but those two bones before he threw them in were in there when I walked up.
Now stick with me here. The helicopter pilot's testimony is next. In my first documentary, I did some exploration into some amazing country, looking for the Sasquatch myself or following up a report that I had received. You will enjoy that show if you haven't seen it.
This is a mean bear track right here. It's a wide one.
That is a wide one. Look at that, and then it continues on. And I have been doing plenty of exploration myself. In fact, I filmed this unique bear up close in Glacier National Park, and this is a very unique bear in that I believe it's a grizzly and black bear hybrid. You will see that it has the face of a black bear, but the hump of a grizzly. But rather than taking you on a bunch of Sasquatch expeditions, I felt it would be more profitable to interview for you those who said they actually did have an experience. I'm here with Joe Barnaby, and he's going to tell about his friend, and this is not an actual Bigfoot baby, this is Jeremiah. I am sorry for the noisy, somewhat distracted atmosphere in some of my interviews because none of my interviews on any of these documentaries are in any way pre-prepared where I tell the people what they should say. So go ahead, appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, so Bob, he works for a helicopter outfit that basically fights fires in California, but it's like a privatized unit. So he doesn't work for the actual firefighter department, but he also works for an outfit that does the logging industry up in Washington. And he told me a story. The story was very convincing, and it was right from the heart. He said he had piloted, now there's no roads to the logging, where they collect all the lumber.
So there's no roads?
No roads.
Actually doing the logging with airlifting?
Airlifting, they'll come out.
Wow.
Yeah, so they'll come out and cut it down, they'll bundle it up, and then and the helicopter, what I'm saying, it's gigantic, so the load is incredible. I don't know what they call it. It's got there's no, it's empty in the middle, but it's just huge, gigantic. It's a workload. It's a workload. Yes. And he rested for the night, and he was in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. And he woke up the next day to find prints all around his cabin, going right, leading into the woods. Like it came down, checked it out, and then went back in. The guys he works with, they were non-believers for a while until they started having their own experiences with this being, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. He told me that story. He ended up making casts of them because he did. He compared the casts to the ones that were from the Patterson Gimlin film, from Patty, the original one that was world famous. And that was one story he told me. The second one, he was in a different part of Washington, and he was relieving himself.
Now, what part? First of all, what part of Washington was that? Did he happen to say?
You know what? I could call him up right now, and if he's not working, hopefully
He's there.
He's a good dude.
That's incredible because
he could tell you more. Like it's hearing it from him is a lot easier. I could probably put him on videos. Let's go right here. Key contacts.
would it be okay if I gave Jeremiah a soda or something?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Like maybe a 7-Up's okay?
Yeah, his pops is over there. So. I don't know if you're going to hear this, but hopefully he picks up.
Hello.
Hey, Bob, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, Joe?
Hey, man, it's kind of cool, brother. I'm in Montana right now, going through Glacier National Park. Just left part of it, and I walked into the store and I see some it's like gift shops, restaurant / right on the road. I don't know exactly where it is, but the gentleman I'm with right now, I don't even know your name. What's your name?
James Willows.
James Willows, yeah. So I told him about your experience with the helicopter, but he'd love for you to tell him exactly what you went through with the Sasquatch, if you don't mind.
Oh, when I was at the whole river in Washington, is that the one? Are you talking about that one, or when we were on Vancouver Island when the guy saw it?
Yes, but I was going to get to both of them. I also told him about the time you had the helicopter. And you were in the cabin, and then you told me, and you said that the footprints were there all around the cabin as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. We had them around the cabin, and that was we were on Vancouver Island, and then we were flying the cutters in because you can't build logging roads up on Vancouver Island, so everything's got to be flown in. So we were in a Hughes 500, and we were flying the cutters in. And as we just came up over, we were about 400 feet, and two of the cutters saw one walking across the clear cut, and we circled back around and did a complete 360, and we were heading towards it as it was walking back into the timber. I mean, it was big. There was that one. And then the next one was when we were camping on the Hoh River.
Sir, how big?
Well, when you're 400 feet up, you can tell it's bipedal, it's walking. I'm going to guess 8-9 feet, probably pushing 600-700 pounds.
Wow, what kind of coloration?
All black. It was all black as an ace of spades.
Black as an ace of spades. How tall would you just guess the animal was?
Oh, geez, man.
10 feet? 9-10 feet?
9, 10 feet.
Whoa.
It was good size, man.
But
he was all shiny and hairy.
Shiny and hairy?
No, shiny like mink.
Yeah.
Real black and shiny.
This is Vern, my milkman, and we were just chatting over lunch here, and he was sharing a couple of stories.
I have a friend who's a sergeant with the Sheriff's Department in Washington State.
What's his name?
His name is Eddie Anderson. He says, and down at the creek was this big black thing. He said, and all of a sudden it stood up.
Was it at all shiny?
We're 400 feet up.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of, and actually it was early in the morning, and so we couldn't see any reflection from the sun off of it,
One person that told me said it was black and shiny like a mink, the one that they saw down in California. I was just curious.
Yeah, no. Too far to really see any cone shape to the head, but basically we could tell that it was walking on 2 feet, and it was probably, I'm gonna say, less than a quarter mile that was across this clear cut, and we were halfway when we came up over the top of the ridge that So it probably walked a good 500-600 feet, you know, straight across that we saw.
They are elusive, and I know that even in remote areas, a lot of time you don't see them. But I was thinking to myself, well, why don't some people with like helicopters and things like that see them? Well, one of the sightings that I felt was pretty realistic here in our area was in Glacier Park after 4 months of COVID closure. So it was just like a abandoned national park, and then that 4 hours after it opened, one was sighted in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks so much. And what about the next one?
The next one was my first one, which was back in 89, and we were camping on the Hoh River, which is the Olympic Forest in Washington State. It wasn't a sighting, and we were all sitting around a campfire at night playing loud music, and it just went complete. The music stopped, and it was just dead silence, and out of nowhere we hear these huge splashes in the river, and we knew there was nobody around us. We had been out that day, no campers, nothing. And I had told Joe, until you hear it, the rocks were so big and the noise was so loud that you could hear the rocks hitting the rocks in the water underneath. Wow. It was a kaboosh with a crash. So they were big rocks that whatever was throwing them.
Could you see the rocks going into the river?
No, because it was, it's like 10:30, 11 at night. We were all sitting around drinking at the campfire. So that's the one. And every couple of the guys are like, that's just elk running across the river. I'm like, that ain't elk. No way. And I was, from that point on, my eyes were watching everywhere.
Isn't that something? I had a similar experience in the Flathead River. We canoed for 3 days from West Glacier to Flathead Lake, and on the second night we pulled into a real kind of a spooky, remote little island in the river that was the type of place that most people would never go, and we camped on that, and I just had the eeriest feeling, and I told my buddy, man, I just have a spooky feeling about this place, like I'm being watched or something. He said, I do too, I can't sleep. And then all of a sudden there was a giant kersplash. And then we were really freaked out, and then another giant kersplash. And we, to this day, really couldn't figure out what it was, because it was more than a beaver tail going down. And unless something fell from the sky, I couldn't imagine what could make such a giant kersplash.
And these guys are hunters, and I'd have seen it by now.
Yeah.
I'm in the woods all the time. It's probably seen you. You just haven't seen it.
Right.
And when I heard those, and I heard the splash, and then the kerpow underwater was that loud that you could hear it, I'm like, that's not just some kid throwing rocks in the river. And we knew there was nobody around us. We were miles away.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
just like my situation.
Yeah, somebody didn't like us there playing Ted Nugent super loud.
That's funny. So Joe here was saying something about a cabin. He was staying at a cabin one time.
Yeah, that was on Vancouver Island. We were at a cabin.
Oh,
we had
okay.
tracks in the morning, all around. I sent Joe pictures of the footprints from that. I've got castings of those.
That's on my other phone, but yes, you did.
That's amazing. Well, we sure appreciate you sharing this story with us. Do you mind if I get your first name or even last name?
It's Bob Perry, Perry.
Bob Perry. And you were flying a big Huey helicopter?
That was a Hughes 500. I normally fly a Sky Crane.
A Sky Crane. That is so interesting. Because what a perfect way to see one is flying by helicopter over remote territory. Have you done that a lot in your life?
I've been flying about 30 years.
About 30 years, but in that 30 years, this was the only one that you really saw.
Yeah, that's the only one that I've seen flying. You hear a lot of guys that talk about it. Like if you go on YouTube YouTube, there's a really good story from when Mount St. Helens blew up, where the Army came in and had 2 dead bodies of them. That it's a great story, and it makes you think, yep, that happened, because the ape caves were very well known up in Washington State of Mount St. Helens. Multiple sightings, and I think there's a story of a couple attacks.
Ape Canyon. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Well, you got to watch my show, The Incredible Bigfoot documentary, because last time my milkman here at my business is from that area, and he said when it blew up, there were some that were displaced.
My brother-in-law ended up in jail for drinking and driving. Well, while he was sitting in jail that night, this guy got arrested for poaching elk, and the game wardens had brought him into the sheriff's department to the jailhouse, and he was standing in the jail cell screaming about seeing Bigfoot and that it was going to get him and all this stuff. And the game warden walked up to him, grabbed him by his shirt, slammed him into the bar and said, if you don't shut your blankety blank mouth, you're going to disappear.
And what year was this?
About 84.
And where did this take place?
Lewis County, Washington, right next to Mount St. Helens.
Ah, interesting.
Yep, right. It wasn't very long after it had erupted, so I'm sure it probably moved some of them out of their natural habitat into other areas.
And government officials came to him and said, listen, fella, you be quiet or you're going to disappear. That's what they told him.
Wow.
Yeah.
We know they're there, and we know that if the government acknowledges it, it'll affect the logging industry. And you're talking big money on the line. I think you're paying a lot for wood now. They have to create, have their habitat protected.
Yes.
That's my theory.
That's your theory, I understand.
Aha!
One objection I've heard often is that with all the technology our government has, including satellite images, surely they would find one. This brother's testimony was very powerful because he said what happened if they would find one. The spotted owl closed down almost whole states for logging. What would a family of Bigfoot in a region do to logging? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-logging. I was a carpenter for many years, and it's important for us to have lumber. But I also played baseball for many seasons, and I asked my coach, who was a logger since he was little, did you ever see a Bigfoot in all that logging and all that walking of timber and logging that you've done? And he said, no, buddy, but I had a sound-minded, reliable sawyer who said he saw a family of them up in the Swan. Well, that is super cool. We sure appreciate you sharing your story, Mr. Perry.
Oh, no problem.
Well, once again, thanks so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate this. And if there's any chance of getting any picture of that footprint or something, I'd sure love to show it.
Okay, I got him in my phone. I'll send.
Wow, well, that is super cool.
Wow, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'll tell you the story, but that's to hear it from him. He was the one. It's amazing.
Well, we're going to sign off, but thanks so much.
All right. Good talking to you. Good talking to you, Joe.
All right, Bob. Great. I'll give you a call later on, brother.
But we gotta get going.
Yep, we do.
Yeah.
Listen, it was fantastic. I thought I'd just share that with you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Walter from Skamania County, Washington. The county I grew up in has the distinction of being the only county where it is illegal to shoot Bigfoot. The reason that being is in the 70s, a lot of people started coming up there trying to shoot themselves a squatch to prove its existence. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys in that county look a lot like me.
So if you're be mistaken.
So in fear for the lives of their constituents, they made it illegal to shoot Bigfoot.
That's pretty cool. Now, I had a guy, and it was the wildest story, but he said he met a girl whose father was a Sasquatch. All right, this is my friend Mike. Mike and I go back a long way. I actually employed Mike as a carpenter for me probably 20 years ago or so. So he's the kind of trustworthy guy I would trust what he says. Now, he did have a stroke, so he can't talk real fluently. But Mike's going to tell about an experience that he had around here that could have been a Bigfoot.
I was on my bicycle about 10 years ago.
You bicycles all over the place.
Yeah, bicycle all the time. I was on the east side and it's all gravel. Anyway, I was over there about 10 miles in from Hungry Horse.
And this is a road that I've traversed east side of Hungry Horse Reservoir dozens and dozens of times. And I never saw a Bigfoot. I never saw a track. We were probably raising enough noise that a Bigfoot would have just got out of the way. But I can see the possibility of a guy just bicycling along this area, actually seeing something.
I saw something, and then I saw it better, and it was a big grizzly, big thing, and I saw it, and it saw me, and it took off, and that was it. And that was much as I saw, because it was about 50 yards away, maybe.
So you say it was a big kind of a grizzly thing.
Yeah.
Did it look like a bear standing up, or what did it seem to look like?
It looked like a human standing up.
Ah.
Yeah.
Any idea how big it may have been?
It looked like it was about 7 feet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was about 7 feet.
So it looked like a big hairy human standing up.
Yeah.
And where were you, about 10 miles up the west side where you go over the dam and up, or the east side?
I was the east side.
Oh, up around Hungry Horse Creek, around in there.
Yeah. I was up. I used to go up there a lot, about 10 miles in.
And you were just riding your bike on the regular road there,
Yeah,
and
on
you
the
looked
road.
off to your left or right?
To the right, on the lake side.
Interesting. I fish right around there.
Yeah.
Now,
I do too. Yeah, I go
Do
up
you?
there. Yeah.
Now, did you smell anything?
Yeah, I did. I smelled something. I went there to where it went into the woods, and I smelled something.
What did you smell? What did it smell like?
Smell bad. It didn't. It smelled unclean.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You know, I've been told that they scavenge on like roadkill deer and stuff, so
Really?
they're not exactly the cleanest smelling animal. Many people have said there's kind of a stench involved with them.
Yeah. That's
Interesting. Now, I know you hang out
On the Menominee Indian Reservation, my nephew was riding on the back of his four-wheeler, his friend's four-wheeler. My sister just got him a camcorder, and they were just riding through the woods, and he was recording everything. And when they got back, they noticed that there was something huge and running through the woods, and they couldn't make it out, but you could rewind it and watch it over, and it was amazing. I swear to God, it had to have been Bigfoot.
Wow, isn't that something? Now, let me ask you this. I've been interviewing people, and a disproportionate amount of my people that have seen them are Native American.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any special connection with the Native American peoples and Bigfoot?
There's a lot of talk about it, yeah, but a lot of the Western Indians, we're more Midwest.
Yeah.
A lot of the Western Indians have seen it. There's been talk about it from our elders actually seeing.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any documentation of us communicating, but seeing, yes, it's been handed down.
Interesting. Well, I know there was cave drawings and everything of Bigfoot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's in Wisconsin, the Menominee Indian, which I am. We are the original inhabitants of the state of Wisconsin, from Lake Superior all the way down to
wow.
Is it Lafayette, Indiana, maybe South Bend, Indiana area.
Yeah.
So and there was guys telling me that I needed to come see the caves, that they actually had drawings of a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff, and also Bigfoot drawings and stuff, like just bigger.
And where are those caves?
On the map, it would be between Black River Falls and La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Oh, interesting.
In that area.
Well, thank you for your time. What's your name, sir?
Colin Law.
Colin
Junior.
Law?
Yeah, Junior.
Well, thank you. God bless you.
Yeah. I made a paper in grade school. I went to St. Anthony School when I was little. It's a Catholic school. And I wrote it. They told us to write a paper. It was a science fiction day.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, but this was in my head. I wrote on that paper that the Bigfoot is like the military. They go in and they see, but they can't be seen. And Bigfoot is the monitors. And whenever a world war happens,
UFOs are seen, but this is what I wrote on her, because we are different from you, the white man. We are different from the Chinamen. We are different from the black man. And also the Indians are different from us.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm thinking this is a big ant farm. Earth is a big ant farm. We were just transplanted here to see how we react.
Bigfoot monitors, that's
Bigfoot's a monitor, man. I'm just saying, you know. That's the possibility. I wrote that when I was a little kid.
Thanks for your thoughts.
Okay, I'm from Panama City, and I work at Target as a vendor. My name is Julie Robbins, and one of my vendor friends, he came into the store one day, and he was just white as a ghost. And he's like, "You are not going to believe this." He said, "I was riding down Highway 20, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and he said that he could see this figure."
It was that morning, right? You saw him right after this happened.
It was that morning, and he thought it was a bear, but as he was coming up close to it, he said it was huge, and he realized it wasn't a bear. And he said what got to him was that it took 2 strides, and it was across the highway.
Had an incident where an animal that was vertical in nature crossed ahead of his truck. He looks like a trucker. Are you a trucker, Charles? Yeah, Charles is a trucker, and they go thousands of miles a year, so they could very well see something. So
Like 3 or 4 strides and he was gone.
one of the gals that told me a story from the reservation in Washington that's famous for Bigfoot sightings, Sasquatch sightings, told me that her sighting, the animal crossed the county road in 2 strides. And did it seem like it took quite a bit of territory per stride?
Well, yeah, it was a 2-lane road. Probably about 3, maybe.
I'll say 80 feet, and I would say within seconds it was up there because it had a big stride.
He said what got to him was that it took 2 strides, and it was across the highway.
Wow.
And it just disappeared into the woods. And when he came to me and was telling me the story, he was white as a ghost.
Isn't that
and
something?
so it made me, realize.
And you're a skeptic.
Yeah. It made me realize that maybe he's telling me the truth, because he was shaking and white. And he's like, "You're not going to believe this, but you're going to think I'm crazy, but this is what happened to me like 20 minutes ago."
And she's known this vendor for a long time.
Yeah.
And worked with him for years because he's their wine vendor.
Yeah.
Does the route at like 4 a.m. in the morning and comes to the store that she services.
Okay, this is Mandy Vanadeau, and she went to Talahina where her parents lived, and they had an incident. So tell me about that.
So in Talahina, Oklahoma, me and my brother went down to the cabins down there at the bottom of the mountains, and it's about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, sitting out on the porch, and dogs are going crazy, just barking, and all of a sudden they stop all at the same time, and out of nowhere we hear.
Was it like a holler or a yell of some kind?
Yes.
High-pitched or low-pitched? Or going through a range?
Well, I would say it started off with a high pitch to a low, just in that, like a split second of the noise, whatever, but it echoed off the mountain.
Wow, and how long did it last?
3 seconds, maybe.
3 seconds.
Yes.
So what did the dogs do when the noise occurred?
Oh, everybody just stopped in sync. All dogs that were barking immediately stopped.
Do they put their tail between their legs?
I don't know, because it was off in the distance that these dogs were barking on the hill where these people lived. Because people live all up from the side of the mountain there.
Yeah.
And they just immediately stopped and never made another noise.
Wow.
We did not hear any dogs from there on.
And there's parts of the Kiamichi Mountains that's never even been stepped foot on by humans. I mean, it's that vast.
It is. It's very vast. It's like looking out here.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah. Well, you'll see on my next video a Native American guy who said he heard one right over here on that mountain.
Nice. Wow, that's cool.
So that Talahina area, you were saying, is sort of known for
It is
Sasquatch.
It's very known.
Oh, wow.
Talahina, Oklahoma.
And your parents lived there a long time.
They lived there for a couple of years and now moved back closer to us, but yeah.
And it was that kind in the mountains?
Oh, it's very mountain.
What mountains?
Kaimichi Mountains.
Kaimichi Mountains. But
It's
Mandy
very wooded
here
like
says
this.
she's not necessarily a believer, so that screech didn't make a believer out of you?
Almost.
Almost.
I didn't get to see it. I didn't get to see what made that noise, but I don't think that was a human.
Yeah, I don't think
I'm a believer.
Yeah.
This guy's a believer.
The knuckle dragging mouth breather.
Knuckle dragging mouth breather. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
You bet.
Okay, so my name is Michael, and I'm a former resident of Hungry Horse, Montana. And so back in 1970, 6 years old, me and my siblings and a couple of friends were back on the lake in the back towards the elementary school. Now, I was on the my Stingray bike, brand new with the slick on the back, you know, as we all know, back then that was the fad. And they were all on foot. We're throwing rocks and carrying on back there and having a great time as kids do. And we heard this screech. It wasn't an elk, it wasn't a moose, it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a deer, you know, it wasn't a wolf, it wasn't a coyote. It was a distinctive screech that people say that Bigfoot doesn't exist. I beg to differ. I heard him, and you could just feel that it was something other than any of those animals. Scared the you-know-what out of it.
Yeah.
So, we took off. I'm on a Stingray bike. I am very excited and adrenaline's flowing. I'm scared and I'm rolling. I've got this. I'm going home. I'm going, and here comes my big brother and here comes my big sister. They're all passing me and I'm scared. Oh, no, come back here. They're not coming back. They're not coming back. They're moseying on back to the house too. So they beat me back to the house. I show up a couple minutes later. Everybody dispersed. And we heard this, and to this day, they'll tell you the same story. So we know for a fact, in these here hills,
Here is the area in Hungry Horse where he was talking about hearing the animal. There's a river down there, and across on that mountain, it's pretty wild. I've hiked it, and I didn't hear anything, but that's where he was speaking of. They were probably right down there playing by the river and heard the sound coming from across the river. The gal that was with him, that's been with him for many years, also said he told the story to her many times. And he said even years later when the kids got together and talked about the incident, it was always a spooky incident that really sobered them up. Well, the animal would certainly have some nice pure water to drink, huh?
Yeah, we were coming down the four-wheel drive roads, and we were coming back around the switchback. We heard some whistling, so we stopped, shut the vehicle off, and whistled at it, and it whistled back, and that was the last of that.
And where was that at, Ken?
It was above Wilkinson, Washington.
Pretty high?
Yeah, it was pretty high up.
Did you go look for tracks or anything?
No, we never got out. It was just too late, dark at night.
Yeah.
It was like around midnight, 1 o'clock.
Ken was saying he feels they mimic other animals.
Yeah, that's what I've seen in all documentary.
Yeah, so in this case it may have been mimicking a bird or something.
Yeah, a day bird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
How are you?
I'm camera
Okay.
shy.
Oh, come on.
On YouTube, there's a Bigfoot video, and there's a guy who's dressed in a Bigfoot suit, and he goes across the road, and they're filming it, right? He actually gets hit. He dies in the suit.
And did he die? Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't far from here.
Yeah, on Highway 93 or something.
Yeah.
Train conductors and stuff, and the stuff that they've seen.
You know, when you were talking about the guy who gets the testimony from hunters, it brought to mind what I saw is a guy said he was 4.7 miles back in the woods bow hunting, and then they supposedly saw this Bigfoot, and it was pretty hokey. You could tell it was somebody in a Bigfoot suit. And so sometimes those fake incidents turn people off, and I know there are such fake incidents.
She was just driving along, saw a Bigfoot chasing a deer along the side of a highway, and she said she checked her mirror a second time just to get that second look at the mysterious creature. When she looked up, the deer ran right in front of her car, and that's when she says she hit it.
Bigfoot. The woman described Bigfoot around 7 to 8 feet tall. Her crash and the Bigfoot sighting occurred at milepost 366.9, which is near Bricken Road.
Bigfoot caused her to crash her car.
Now, because the potlatch incident was carried on the Associated Press, you can find numerous reports of the incident, but none of the reports you will find will have the lady's name. It simply says an Idaho woman. It is because the lady who reported it is a well-known member of the community and that the case has political implications. Well, this is Kim, and she lives near the Potlatch area, and she was mentioning that there's some activity in that area.
Well, yes, I've yet to see Bigfoot, but there's been several sightings around where we live. They've been known to occupy Moscow Mountain. And then a couple years ago, I believe there was a woman that wrecked her car north of Potlatch as one ran in front of her on the highway. So I live in Onaway, Idaho, which is literally just right over the hill from Potlatch. Since Potlatch was a company town when it was formed by the lumber mill, by the Potlatch Corporation,
It had like the world's largest lumber mill almost.
Yeah, there was no alcohol allowed. So right over the hill was the town of Onaway, which had bars in it. So whenever wives would try to contact their husbands, they'd say they were on a way home.
That is hilarious.
That is
So I've been very curious about this whole incident because I read about it, I researched it, because it sounds pretty credible. Some lady saying that she saw a Bigfoot cross, and then she saw it in her rearview mirror, and it was chasing a deer, and the whole ordeal was enough that she wrecked her car. And you know, it was on national news. And,
oh, was it?
Yes, and
yeah,
so
I
was pretty curious about it. Is there any talk around the town of the incident?
Oh, sure, absolutely. To the extent that our local grocery store has a big Bigfoot statue outside of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And is that mostly in relation to that one incident, or other incidents too?
Well, there's been incidents on Moscow Mountain. I know, and I'm not sure what show it was, but one of the national shows did an episode on Moscow Mountain. So there's been talk about it for years and years, but that was the most recent sighting.
Well, you know, in the Kootenai National Forest, they actually have a government placed sign about what to do should you encounter a Sasquatch, because there's been plenty of Sasquatch activity in that area as well. I don't know if you guys are aware, but Idaho ranks, I believe, 4th in the nation in terms of Sasquatch sightings that have been somewhat documented.
I didn't know that. And where's Montana? What's 1, 2, and 3?
5th.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
As an avid hiker, hunter, backcountry skier, I did not believe in Bigfoot because I've never seen him. But after interviewing over 10 people who said that they saw him, I do believe, because I saw truth in some of their faces.
Smelled the stink smell. Thought it was a wild bear or hog with Bigfoot.
And there was similarity in some of their testimony. They all spoke of a smell ranging from barnyard to skunkish to reeking like a wild boar. And I didn't prep any of these people for these interviews. Secondly, the height evaluations were consistent with the Montana Bigfoot being described as from 6'6" to 8 feet, and the coastal variety being described as larger. Thirdly, there was consistent testimony in the manner in which the Bigfoot ran.
It was there maybe 3 seconds. It disappeared behind some trees.
It was running?
It was running.
Did it look like it was running with a nice gait, a nice even gait, or was it like awkward running?
It was awkward running because it was kind of almost hunched over a bit.
With a somewhat awkward gait that wasn't really set up for running.
The way it was running, I don't know how to describe how it was almost like it was an uncomfortable run, like a large walk if you were to try to step over a puddle or something like that.
Fourthly, it was pretty consistent that they are very elusive and the world champion hide-and-go-seek artist. And fifthly, in an area where there were sightings, there were often other sightings reported at about the same time. And 6, because some of the people I've interviewed who said they saw him up close were scared spitless, even like the lady's testimony on this video that her delivery driver was still almost white and shaking. Now, some people say, well, show me a body, or show me a fossil, or even a bone, and then I'll believe. To me, I've found this very similar to what I have discovered through my faith in Christ. Some people say, yeah, let me put my hand in there and touch the hole where he was crucified, and then I'll believe. That's what Thomas said. And you know, I've been to Chennai, India, where Thomas was speared on a hill for his faith, because he surely did believe. But most people never get that opportunity to put their hand or touch Jesus. So they have to make a decision to believe based upon the testimony of others. People who did see him, who did spend time with him, who did see him when he rose from the dead. People like Matthew, Mark, Dr. Luke, John the Beloved, Paul the Apostle. I myself am pretty convinced that Bigfoot is real, but I'm 100% convinced that Jesus Christ is real. Because I was a lost, addicted guy, constantly in trouble with my principal, the vice principal. I was also on parole and had regular visits to our local cop shop or jail. And then I got in a big fight, which wasn't too unusual, but in this fight, my buddies all fled. And I found myself looking down the wrong end of a .357 Magnum and got beat up pretty bad that night. And not long after that, I said a simple prayer to accept a Christ that I wasn't even 100% sure existed. I woke up completely set free from a 3 times a day pot addiction and completely set free from a drink till I puke alcohol addiction. When the principal of our high school, Mr. John Giacomino, noticed the great change in me, that I went from a troublemaker and a fighter and someone who'd show up drunk at the school dances to an intelligent, level-headed kid, he called up my pastor and said, "Pastor, what did you do to that Buddy Willows? Can you do it to some more of these kids?" Pastor said, "I didn't do nothing. Jesus changed his life." And that was really the truth. And my parole officer, when he saw me, he said, "Buddy, I can see you're a completely changed individual. What in the world happened?" And I said, "I came to know the Lord Jesus Christ." And he said, "Well, I can see it in your eyes. Something is completely different." And it was. I went from searching and addicted to happy inside and content. If you'd like to hear more about that, for about $7, you can get my book on Amazon, The Wild and Crazy Buddy Willows and How He Found God at the Wrong End of a .357 Magnum. And tells about how I found a new life. And millions of people throughout the world believe and can testify of a similar life change in their life. In fact, it's a government statistic that guys who get out of prison that do not experience this life change have an over 90% chance of going back to prison. But others who sincerely experience the same life change I did and stick with it have a very small chance of going back to prison. Some of you may have come to believe in Bigfoot through my documentaries. And if you do, that's cool. But it would be even more cool if you came to believe in Christ Jesus through my documentary. And if you would like to say the same simple prayer that I said that night that was the turning point for my life, this is the prayer, and I'd like you to pray it now. Heavenly Father, I realize I'm a sinner, that I have missed the mark and fall short of your glory. I know the penalty for sin is death, and I thank you for sending your only Son, Jesus, to take my penalty on the cross. Now, Lord Jesus, I surrender my heart to you. Come into my life and be my Lord and Savior. I believe that you rose again from the dead. And I'm asking that that same resurrection power would come into my life and give me the power to rise from addiction, loneliness, depression, or whatever binds me. If you did it for Buddy, you can do it for me. Now, I love and appreciate all the subscribers on my channel. I even have cannabis growers that have subscribed to my channel. And I really want to just serve everybody regardless of what their religious preference is. But if you said that prayer, go to this channel on my station called Christian Teaching. But if you go there, I will give you some things that will help you go the distance. When I first became a Christian and started going to our local church, I heard the people talking. Why, buddy, you'll never make it even a week. If he stays off of drugs and drinking and partying and chasing girls for even 2 weeks, it'll be a miracle. 3 weeks max, and he'll be right back doing what he always was. But somebody else told me, buddy, you can do this. All you got to do is read your Bible every day and be in church every Sunday. And I thought, man, I'm no rocket scientist, but I think I can do that. And for 40 years now, that's what I've done. I've never smoked a joint and I've never sold a joint. I even gave all my bongs away to my friends and I've never even been drunk. It's working. But for those of you who think all this is a crock, that's okay. I still like you. It's cool. But I only took 5 minutes. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you liked it, please share it with your friends. And if you give me a sub, maybe I'll have a little more dough to make good videos. Thanks now.
Good boy.
Well, my customer here was looking at the Bigfoot documentary, and she said, man, I saw a Bigfoot when I was younger. Do you mind telling us your name? If you don't want to, you don't have to tell us your full name.
Diane.
Uh-huh.
And when I was very young, I would say probably about 9 or 10, we were in Mount Shasta at a rest stop. And then we were just looking up on the hillside because it looked kind of bare. And we seen a stump, and then we seen something very dark we thought was a bear. And then all of a sudden it stood up and then started waving at us. Then a busload of tourists came and they were trying to get their cameras out. And as soon as that happened, it just dashed up the hill, the Bigfoot.
Wow.
And we didn't see it
and
again.
And it covered a lot of territory.
It was up there. It had to be at least, I'll say 80 feet. And I would say within seconds, it was up there because it had a big stride and going up a steep incline.
And how big do you reckon it might have been?
I would say it's probably about 8 feet but the shoulders were broad. That's why I thought it was a bear. Yeah. But a bear wouldn't wave at you and stand up.
Did it wave almost like a person?
Yes, it waved like a human.
That's something. The Bigfoot waved at you.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you wave back?
Well, I was trying to, and then all of a sudden a busload of tourists came, and they were kind of like all excited, and it just dashed up.
Now, where is Mount Shasta?
It's in California.
Northern?
Yeah, northern.
What's
California.
The nearest town?
I can't remember.
Wow.
Eureka or something.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. We appreciate that, Diane.
Okay.
So my high school history teacher actually said he saw Bigfoot in the Columbia Gorge. He was actually coming back from a basketball tournament. He said he saw him leaning up on a 7-foot sign, raining, nasty wet weather, and he said he saw it. So it was
wow,
cool.
Leaning up on a sign. And where did you go to school at?
Hood River Valley High School.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
The docket, whatever, in 13-year-old Joshua Skunk Cap. To touch the ground as they are off and now watch this. Miles Skunk Cap.
Duck Lake on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. And as the sun was burning a hole through the morning mist, we could see this beautiful bison herd roaming the Blackfeet Plains as they had for thousands of years, probably. I think I got one. Oh my God. Pulling me in. The beautiful rainbow trout. Particularly blessed to land this beautiful brown trout.
He had no expression, and it was like he was staring right through me. And I looked at him and I said, Alvin, what's wrong? It was like he was in a state of shock. And finally he kind of snapped out of it and he ran and jumped in the driver's seat. Well, I'm a big scaredy cat in a brush. If someone's running, I'm running too. I was like a second behind him and I was in the passenger side. Alvin just threw it down in drive and just buried it. We were just busting through the road. What scared you? And he was like, he said, there's something big and tall and hairy.
Yeah, it's just a guy named Bruce Shelts. He's a rancher there, and I mean, he's not a joker at all. He did brought his kids skiing, and then they run across the tracks, and it was too hard to track because the wind was kind of blowing the hilltops bare. A lot of bare ground and snowy getting them tracks, but it was sneaking through a remote place where he saw that nobody would have. If he went and took his kids up, nobody had ever seen it.
They were cross-country skiing?
Just sleighing, in the bog in there, a little hill. But he did call in, he put it in it was in the Browning paper, the photos he took, and then the Bigfoot, the official researchers, they came in and, they identified it as a positive Bigfoot track and left him with cameras, all kinds of goodies to.
Did they say how big it was?
I seen it was like, like yay, but
about 18
where
inches.
It went and it busted through this ice and stuff. The distance in between. I don't have the numbers, but anyway, I gotta run. I gotta get that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'll stop.
Hey, where was it at though?
When you get to Browning, there's a road that heads straight west back to Kiowa Camp, it's called. And then out of East Glacier, there's a mountain road called Looking Glass Trail, and it goes out of East Glacier, goes to Medicine, and up over to Looking Glass, they call it, and drops right into Kiowa Camp.
Oh, okay. Are those gravel roads or?
No, brand new finished roads up the Looking Glass, but then Kiowa Camp, you head north and take you right into St. Mary's at 89.
Oh, nice. Hey, thank you very much. Have a great day now. Another report of possibly the same animal on the Blackfeet res said that it was 8 to 9 feet tall. Its hands hung below the knees, and it had big green eyes.
So we're going to get a little snippet of his latest information from the web.
Well, one night we were watching a program, and it was about Sasquatch through the United States. And one of the gentlemen that was on there was, I'm going to say, from Pennsylvania back east somewhere. And he actually feeds one. He actually showed pictures of the apples that he gives him, and he has created this relationship with this creature of feeding it, and you can see it moving through the trees coming up to his apples. He will not tell anybody where it's at, where he goes, because he's afraid somebody's going to shoot it.
Isn't that something?
He's been on numerous times talking about it.
That is something.
38 years of archery hunting under my belt.
Wow.
And all that time, I seen 2 cougars in my whole life in the woods.
Only 2 cougars.
And that was 3 years ago. We seen them both the same hunting season.
But did you ever see a Bigfoot track or any evidence?
Nope, never seen anything like that. And I hunted a lot next to Mount St. Helens in Washington State. And I've traveled a lot of roads, been into a lot of places. Never come across anything. And
I didn't either, and that made me skeptical, because I've probably walked 4,000 miles in Montana.
Yeah. I mean, to actually get out in the woods and walk, I haven't even come across the bear during archery season like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I've had one experience with the bear, and that was a grizzly bear. Second week of archery season, my nephew, I had him learning how to bow hunt. We came up over the little hill, and this grizzly bear was coming up the hill at the same time. And when we stopped, it stopped 22 yards from us to the bear.
Just 22 yards.
22 yards.
What did it do?
It stood there and looked at us, and we walked backwards. And as we made it about 3 or 4 steps backwards, it turned and went down the hill away from us, and I was thankful for that.
Wow. I had a friend named Robbie who was hunting up the North Fork, and as he was doing that cow talk and everything, a grizzly bear came up and bit a baseball-sized chunk out of his back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That wasn't Rob Barnaby, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yes, I worked with him.
You worked
for 10
did
years.
You tell that story?
Oh yes, and the scars that are on his back are just unbelievable.
Wow, isn't that something?
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That you come across different things.
Yeah, I've had them out closest for me to them gentlemen, and they didn't see me because I was behind the bush and I was drawn, and I cow talked him right in. It was so exciting. And then there was a little twig in front of me, so I moved about this much, and when I did,
Just that
It was
tiny
gone.
move, it was gone because it was looking right at me, and a pretty nice young bull.
The best bull I've ever bugled in was with a mouth reed.
Mouth reed, nice.
And it was distorted. My niece at 9 years old had found it sitting in the case on the washer machine, and she grabbed the latex and stretched it. It sounded like you stepped on a duck.
Isn't that something?
I mean, no matter how you blew it, and a friend of mine wanted to keep it. I was going to throw it in the garbage, and he wanted to keep it to call coyotes. He thought it'd work.
Yeah.
Well, we were out.
What did that call?
Yeah, we were out grouse hunting, and I seen a herd of elk up on the hill. I said, let me see that. So I grabbed that reed, put it in my mouth, and when I bugled, it just sounded like nothing. It didn't sound like an elk at all.
Yeah.
But that bull come down 350 yards from where he was and started tearing trees out of the ground within 15 yards from us. It was 4 days before elk season opened for bow.
So, Vern, I know you're a believer in Bigfoot, but what's the single most convincing factoid that convinces you?
That convinces me was the gentleman that was in jail.
Yeah.
And
you told about on
yeah, that I told about on the first video. If there really wasn't any,
yeah,
the game warden would have never told the guy to shut up, or they'd make him disappear.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much 100% evidence that they exist. Our Fish and Game knows they're out there. They probably monitor them. And to have somebody, Joe Blow, screaming about it after getting arrested for poaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the key thing. And then saying he's seen Bigfoot, and them telling him, hey, you know, shut your mouth or we're gonna make you disappear. But they didn't use them nice words when they told it to him.
That's interesting, because last year I was in Roswell, New Mexico, which is the famous UFO place, and there was a very convincing UFO appearance around Roswell, and the nurse that was giving testimony at it did disappear. She was transferred by the Army to England, and nobody ever heard of her again.
Well, yeah, you know, and my thing is, like I tell everybody, if God can make us, he can make anything.
Yeah.
And when you first start reading the Bible, it says God made the heavens and the earth. He didn't say heaven, it was heavens. There's an S.
Interesting.
And the earth. So if there's more than one heaven, there's got to be more than one life establishment out there.
Interesting, yeah.
So, I mean, if you break it down, if we can be created, he can create anything. He's God.
Yeah.
So these animals, you know, the theory of them all, everybody would like to know is where'd they come from?
Yeah.
You know, you don't find any skeleton remains. I mean, there hasn't been anything petrified stating, hey, this is a definite 100% a Sasquatch or a Yeti frozen in ice.
Yeah.
They have yet to come up with any of this. So where'd they come from?
I heard though that there is a guy named Ed Rogan or something on YouTube somehow has some fossil evidence.
See, in the monks over in Pakistan and them places were supposed to have a scalp from one. Well, it ended up turning out after they were able to do DNA testing that it was off of like a orangutan or a monkey.
It was fun fishing.
But it looks like it. It's a full dome cap, and it's hair, and it's probably 100, 200 years old. But they said they found it up in the Himalayas, and that it belonged to a Yeti. But when they finally tested it, it came back to being a primate.
Yeah.
So now they could be telling us that.
Yeah.
So we think, okay, yeah, that's what it is and the way it goes. I mean, nobody ever tells the full truth. So
thanks for tuning in. I hope this has helped bring the Bigfoot from fiction to nonfiction in your thinking. But rather than leave you with a conclusion, let me leave you with a question. A hunter in Montana found this elk impaled quite high upon this tree. How did it get there? It was not in an area that was steep enough for an avalanche. So how did it get there?
Unfortunately, a lot of the guys in that county look a lot like me.
So if you're be mistaken. heading out now. My son Abe started this cool company called Willow's World, and if you want to get one of these great beanies that I wear in all my shows that embodies the spirit of discovery and adventure of my channel, here's the site. Hi, this is Bruce, and he had an encounter with Bigfoot.